Welcome back. I'm Sunir Shah. This is another Agency Connect podcast. I'm president of the Cloud Software Association and CEO of AppBind. I'm on with Nathan Hirsch from Ecom Balance, but he is a master of standard operating procedures and process junkie. He's a process junkie. And this topic is really about how to hire process junkies to scale your agency, which is really what this whole thing has been about, at least this season of Agency Connect. And so I'm going to throw it to Nathan to introduce himself, because it actually has quite an interesting story from free up all the way to Ecom Balance. So thank you so much, Nathan. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. So I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I've never had a quote unquote real job after a few high school jobs and maybe a college internship. But I started a pretty large Amazon business out of my college dorm room. Started off buying and selling college textbooks before getting a cease and desist letter from my college telling me to knock it off and stop competing with them, which ended up being one of the best things that ever happened to me. I explored other things to sell on Amazon. I found drop shipping, and for whatever reason, baby products. If you can imagine me as a 20-year-old college kid with more hair selling baby products on Amazon. But we sold about 25 million on Amazon from 2008 to 2015. And we used a lot of virtual assistants and freelancers to scale that business, mostly because college kids were unreliable and adults didn't take me seriously enough to actually be hired by me. So we had all these VAs, we had all these freelancers, and we started offering them to other e-commerce sellers. And that became the free up marketplace, which we ran for 4 years, e-commerce hiring platform for pre-vetted virtual assistants and freelancers, which I'm sure we'll talk more about. That company was acquired at the end of 2019, which is right before the pandemic, kind of wild. And since then, we've been working on two projects, a course called Outsource School, which teaches our hiring process and how to build really great SOPs. And my new venture, Ecom Balance, which is a bookkeeping service for e-commerce sellers and online businesses. I tend to like unsexy businesses, and I kind of know that the key to all of our success is good hiring, good processes, and knowing our financials. So I feel like I've done a lot in the hiring space, and Ecom Balance is my chance to hopefully make a market in the financial space as well.
That's amazing. As anyone who listens to this podcast, thank you, by the way, knows that our second favorite topic is how, all of us have lost our hair along the way. So I appreciate you for bringing that up.
Yeah,
I wear a hat for a reason. But the second, the most important thing we talk about is the scalability trap that agencies have, where we sell labor for a living. So the more revenue you have, the more payroll you must have, and the payroll turns over, so the more revenue you must have. And it's the only business you can't scale at a risk. And I mean, obviously, AppBind is a tool to help you build systems, but what you're talking about here with FreeUp is similarly. What you did was build a way of selling labor, but in a systemized way through FreeUp, and then you turned to Outsource School. So let's dig in a little bit more. Like, what was FreeUp actually doing? Was it focused on e-commerce as well, the Amazon world?
So we started off marketing in the e-commerce Amazon space. That's where I came from. But by the time we sold it, we were heavily in the marketing space too, targeting agencies and marketing coaches and stuff like that. This is kind of the beauty of FreeUp. And this is why I see a lot of like VA agencies fail. Kind of like what you talked about, you're kind of selling labor. And as you get bigger, you need more people to manage that labor, and the margins don't necessarily go up. With FreeUp, we would vet freelancers before we would let them on the platform. So we'd get about 1,000 applicants a week, and we would interview them. We had a process we'd go through to test them. We had a whole system out that they would go through, and we would only let the top 1% onto the platform. And once they were on the platform, they were free to take any jobs on our job portal, but we had very high expectations for them, and we were very quick to kick people out of the platform if they got bad reviews or constant issues with clients or didn't set expectations correct. We had a whole list of things that were in our terms of use that freelancers had to follow if they wanted to keep getting jobs from us. So we had this whole pool of people. We had clients who would create a free account and put in a request and say, hey, I need a graphic designer, I need a writer, I need whatever it is. And we'd match them up with the freelancer. And then we would take a percentage of every hour that freelancer worked or that VA worked, or if it was a fixed price project, we would take a percentage. but we wouldn't actually manage that virtual assistant. We would be there to help the client with any tips about hiring. We would be there if anything went wrong to make it right quickly and get them a new person or some credit or a refund or whatever it was to make that situation right. But the VA didn't have to report to us, and we didn't have to manage them in any way. And we made that very clear. And that's why I kind of push back when people were like, oh, FreeUp was an agency. It's like, no, we were a marketplace because we didn't actually manage those people. Now, we had an internal team of like 25, 30 people that would help with customer service and filling tickets and marketing tests and stuff like that. But that's way different than the thousands of freelancers that are on the platform. So that's what really allowed us to scale. We're making a percentage of all these people working without us actually having to manage the people. And a small percentage of the money we made on the hours would go towards making customers happy with a credit here, a credit there, or whatever. But that allowed it to, so we were selling labor, but we weren't actually managing that labor, if that makes sense.
Right. And however, your experience here, though, led you to go to outsource school, about figuring out how to therefore then manage outsourced labor, and then eventually to Ecom Balance, where now you are now selling productized services. So
absolutely.
So along the way, something clicked in your mind that maybe there is value here to think about how to manage labor. What was the thing that convinced you like there's something here that we need to spend some time focusing on?
Yeah, I mean, I think I learned early on in the Amazon days that hiring is not that easy, and finding people that can actually build processes is not that easy. I mean, one thing that we did well at FreeUp, and we try to do in all our businesses, is promoting from within. So we like to hire people and teach them how to do a task very well. Let's say it's customer service. And once they prove themselves, we pretty much challenge them with, hey, we want you to own this. We want that customer service to be yours. We want you to build templates, build out SOPs, figure out how to make systems better. And eventually, as you get 30 people, you don't want to be meeting with 30 people every week. You have a leadership team of 3 or 4 people. And those are people who have gone up from the bottom, who know the systems, who have proved that they can build, prove that they can lead, prove that you can manage. Sure, you've helped them along the way, but that's again something that we brought over to Outsource School and Ecom Balance, where we'll hire VAs and start them off at smaller tasks, and then the ones that can prove themselves, we'll give them more and more responsibility, so it doesn't all just fall on me. And I think a lot of people fall into that trap with agencies where they're just working 100 hours a week because they're managing everything, they're doing everything, and they're not trusting other people.
No, it's a funny thing you mentioned about ownership. One of the little tricks I've been doing lately, which I actually has been working really well for my staff. I'm their boss, but I start calling them the boss. It's like, who's the boss? And like they say, I am. I like great. You own the KPI. I do what you tell me to do, and make them feel like the world is theirs. Because from my head, and if you say it out loud, it is theirs. It's their world, right? And then it becomes a lot easier for them to go, well, what's how is it being managed? And they take ownership. Because what I like to say, I may be your boss from 9 to 5, but after 5 p.m., we're just citizens, we're neighbors, right? Maybe you're coaching my kids at soccer, and then I'm following your direction. We're just people. I have these roles, but it's so powerful. I found when you start just saying, you own this, right? And
I love that. Two quick things. So we would do the same thing. If someone would be like your company or whatever, would be like, no, it's our company, or it's we, or it's ours, or whatever, how they talk to clients, how they talk to us. But same thing to you. I'll check in and be like, what can I do to serve you? What can I do to help you? Like, I'm here to support you. You're responsible for your KPIs, like you said. But if you have an issue, if there's some software that you don't have that we need to go out and buy, like, you tell me what you're struggling with and how I can best support you. And that's what I'm there for.
Yeah. Amazing. And so, we talked about this in the pre-interview about hiring people in the Philippines and how you would go to bat for that idea all the time. I've hired people in the Philippines plenty. I mean, all the people I hired were like professionals, like they're all college educated, like amazing people that work all night because of the time zones. Like they're very dedicated people. But I think people have a weird idea of the Philippines because it's so distant from our experience. What was your experience working with people in the Philippines?
Yeah, I mean, they're great. I mean, they learn English at a young age. They learn it in school. They're used to working night shifts. Like with Ecom Balance, all my Filipino bookkeepers work mountain time, which is pretty much across the night for them. They are very technical skills. I mean, they were doing virtual assistant work before it really blew up before the pandemic. A lot of them look for that because it's better opportunities than they would have if they just got a local job. And they're all about family. They have big families. A lot of them live with their families, and that works perfectly with the culture that Connor and I try to build in our companies of a family where we care about each other, and we all are part of the business, and that we own the business, and they'll stick around it if you treat them well. So what we've been able to do, and kind of back to margins, like with Ecom Balance, we have a US team here in Colorado. We've got a team in the Philippines of bookkeepers, and essentially one US bookkeeper manages a team of people in the Philippines, and each person in the Philippines can handle 10 to 35 clients. So that allows us to charge fair pricing while still having a good margin by being able to have a combination of US and non-US labor.
Well, while we mentioned Ecom Balance, let's talk about productized services, because this is one of the way out of the trap is like you may be selling labor, but not, in theory as your fulfillment. That's only the how, shouldn't be the what and why, right? And so your why is about like what's the position of ecom? Like how would you say what Ecom Balance does to a potential customer, right? Even forgetting how it's fulfilled by human beings, like you're selling to a customer an outcome. How would you position it?
Yeah, so we're a monthly bookkeeping service. We charge clients on the 1st. By the 15th every month, they get their income statement, balance sheet, cash flow. We can help with catch-up cleanup work. We can help with a few add-on services, but our core is that monthly bookkeeping. And we bring a unique perspective because we're entrepreneurs first. We're e-commerce sellers first. We speak entrepreneur. We know how to display things in a way that entrepreneurs can understand. A lot of times bookkeepers can't do that. And we're hiring and process people. We want to build this to be scalable and have really great processes that allow your bookkeeping to be how and on autopilot each month.
Okay, so then let's talk about that, because that's really what it comes down to in this call. So how are you organized? How do you think about processes? What processes do you put in? And as a process junkie, like how detailed is it? Like what are you doing?
Yeah. So, I mean, what I've been working on for the past 90 days is from the client point of finding out about Ecom Balance and going to our site to the point where we can actually get started doing on their books. There's a lot that goes into it. We got to collect information and be able to price them. We got to get them to add a payment method and have a portal that they can do that easily with different options that are clear. We have to have an integration person that we just hired that helps get us access to bank accounts, credit cards, marketplaces, any documents that we need, stuff like that in a fast and efficient way. And then we need to be able to assign those tasks to a bookkeeper and create a process for those monthly books, which is slightly different for every single client. So we need a US person able to go into ClickUp, which is what we use for project management, and create the different columns of what we're doing for them every single month. In what order? Are we doing payroll? Are we doing whatever? So that nothing gets forgotten and it doesn't just go by memory or some notes on someone's computer. So kind of building all of that out, and we'll also having our head bookkeepers in the US build the SOPs for every platform. So, hey, if they're an Amazon seller, this is how we do Amazon reports every single month. This is how we do Shopify. This is how Bank of America gets connected and how we input stuff. So it's almost like a million SOPs inside the bookkeeping portion of it, but there's also a client side of how do we streamline that process, and then how do we keep them happy across the line. Like a small example of that is Thursday is client update day. So any client that's in a cleanup project, which could take 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, every Thursday, a notification in ClickUp goes up to all our bookkeepers. They need to give the client an update of what happened in the past week, because that prevents the clients from reaching out to us and our customer service people having to answer 100 emails every week and having to go to the bookkeeper and find out information and passing it back there. So really setting up a system so every single week is the same, every single month is the same. We charge clients on the 1st, we get them their books by the 15th, and there's a process for anything that we encounter along the way.
How do you record these processes? Like what does the SOP look like, and where do you keep them?
So we keep them in ClickUp. We actually have a software called Simply SOP that's part of Outsource School that allows you to do like video and text. So the way that we like to break down SOPs is first the why. So like, why are we doing this task, and what does success and failure look like? Because what we found from the free up days and even the Amazon days is if you just give someone like the steps, do this thing, but they don't actually understand why they're doing it or what success or what failure looks like, then they're not going to do a good job and they're not going to do it consistently across the board. So that's how we start all of our SOPs. Next is the actual steps. So like the 1, 2, 3, 1A, 1B. And that is kind of what we consider a draft, a work in progress, especially in the first year of a business, where we'll go, our head bookkeepers in the US will go in and make these processes better. We might add a tool like A2X that makes connecting from Amazon to QuickBooks better. So that updates the SOP. And then lastly, we have what we call the red flags, or the things to look out for, the things to not do for any reason. And we like to put all the important reminders there so that we don't make the same mistakes over and over. And so it's very clear what should not be done. So all our SOPs are kind of broken that way: the why, the steps, and the red flags are the important reminders.
I love that. Actually, our last episode with Tony Guarnacha, you had very similar feedback. That like you have to put the why on the SOP, because they don't know how to evaluate. A typical SOP is just a bunch of, you're asking like a robot, click here, click there, right? But if you don't have a way to evaluate whether it's success or fail, they're not going to know whether they're doing it right or wrong. And I love that you added the red flags, to the pitfalls. You know what? Because like there's probably pitfalls that you're accumulating over time, right? So right, and it's brilliant.
Right. I mean, half the key to entrepreneurship is just not making the same mistake a second time. That could be a big mistake that like hurts your business, but it could also be a small thing that you just learn from. I mean, I'm new to the bookkeeping space, so there's things that came up in the first 30 days that we don't want to repeat. Like a good example of that is we're compatible with QuickBooks and Xero. We learned very early on that if someone's on Xero, it's a pain to move everything over to QuickBooks. We should probably just stick on Xero. So instead of telling clients, hey, you got to move to QuickBooks, we have another option for them. And so there's certain things you learn over time to prevent previous mistakes, and you want to make sure you document those with the SOPs.
That's amazing. Okay. And then how do you evaluate and hire someone who can live in SOP land? Because not everyone is process oriented. So what are you doing to evaluate potential staff?
Yeah, good question. So we look for, and this is a mistake I think people make. People kind of go for the experience. We look for experience, but we also look for communication, and we look for attitude. So for communication, we obviously want someone who speaks English at a high level, but we also want someone who can communicate the why and actually understand what's going on. If I teach someone a process, I don't want them to repeat the process back to me. I want them to really understand why they're doing it. And we need to be able to get on the same page quickly. I don't want to have to repeat myself. I don't want conversations to go in circles. So we'll do interviews both on Slack and on Zoom to see how quickly this person can respond. Can we understand what they're saying? Can they understand what we're saying and get to the point quickly? And then attitude's kind of the key to it. We try to avoid anyone where money is like their highest priority in life. We want someone who has other passions. They like building. They like going into things that they don't understand and learning them. That's a big thing that we look for. Does this person read books? Does this person try to learn new skills? Or are they looking for something that's they're just comfortable with, that they'll do for the next 15 years. So we kind of dig into the trifecta of the skill, attitude, communication while we're going through the interview process to make sure that they have all three. And when you find people that have the skill, attitude, and communication, very rarely do you make a bad hire, or very rarely do you find someone that doesn't want to grow with the company. And the way to grow with the company is to show us that you can build things without us holding your hand.
It's so interesting. Like a lot of people are afraid if you're selling labor, because they want to control labor. If you're selling labor, right? That if they grow, they're going to leave, right? Because the work is also repeatable. You want to sell the same thing over and over again. And so you can't, in one way, you can't grow. There's a contradiction there. So how do you manage that contradiction between the work has to stay the same, but people have to grow?
Yeah, it's a good point. So a few things. One, we want to build SOPs so that replacing someone, especially on like the lower end, is not as big of a deal. Like obviously it always sucks and you hope it doesn't happen, but if it does happen, you have the SOPs where you can get someone in there that's talented very, very quickly. Now, the real key for us is don't lose your leadership team. Losing your leadership team is the thing that takes the longest to replace. And the way that I kind of look at it is if if money is the only thing you're offering people, there's always going to be another company out there that can offer your people more money than you can. That's one factor, and you should pay people well and have incentive programs. But for us, we really focus on the culture and making sure that people are happy and people are in a place where they like building and they are building and they feel like they own the company or own the department that they're in. And we check in on them when we ask them how they like it and get to know them and build a relationship and kind of create a family within our business, so that people don't want to leave their family. And obviously it'll still happen here and there, but that's what we focus on, instead of just how can I pay this person to keep them around, which in our experience hasn't worked out that well.
I mean, also your stage, I mean, you are building and growing. So it's an exciting time to be there for people who are growing. You are in a growing business. In my experience, I mean, I know I'm interviewing you, but what experience, I've known a few companies in my time. Usually there's always more things to do. And what happens if people are starting to get bored, it's only that people have got into a place where they stopped looking for new opportunities to keep building, right, for clients, but the market always wants more. And so you can always keep going. And if people are getting bored, it's just like, oh, maybe there's an opportunity here that no one thought they had permission to go and chase down, right? And you have all that talent, you might as well give it a try, right? So it's always something to do.
I mean, we have one-on-one meetings every other week, and Connor and I kind of divide them up, but we're meeting with the people on our team, especially the people higher up. Once you get over like 15 people, it's tough to do that. Then you kind of focus on the leadership team and you teach the leadership team how to have the meetings with the other people. But you're really looking for red flags. Like, what is this person telling you that shows they're not 100% happy with the business? And I mean, it could be money. It could be they need time off to refresh and they're burnt out. It could be that someone else in the company is a culture cancer and needs to be removed. I've had situations where we've met with multiple people and they're all saying the same things and we had to get rid of someone. And other times they just might need to be challenged in a different way. Maybe they've been in customer service for a while and they want to take on sales or whatever it is. And that may or may not be possible, but at least if you have that information, you can make those decisions to try to keep that person around.
Yeah, and sometimes if they leave, I'm always trying to think of if they're going to something better because they grew here, then I'm actually happy for that too, right?
Absolutely.
For them. So tell me a little bit about, before we wrap up, about outsource school, because you took some of the lessons from here. If like one, you had a marketplace of labor, and then you're like, oh, I learned something, and I built a productized service company, Ecom Balance. What are you teaching people at outsource school? Like, what is the framework that you want people to know?
Yeah, so we have a specific way that we've interviewed, onboarded, trained, and managed people over the years. And that's really what we teach at Outsource School, from the exact interview questions we ask to how we onboard them and set expectations and hold those expectations up front, to how we train them and build great SOPs. And like right now, I'm training a full-time integration person. I'm going through the same process there. And it's not only about creating good SOPs, but also how do you get them up to speed in the fastest time possible, but also how do you alert yourself when things aren't going wrong as early as possible? If someone's going to be a bad hire, you want to find that out in week 2 or 3, not in month 4, 5, and 6. So the part of that is in training. And then managing is everything from the structure of the meetings we were just talking about, to how we do team happy hours once a month and what the goals are, but also how do you fire people? What's the correct protocol for that? And the steps that we follow that are the same in all our companies. So it's really just our hiring blueprint of how we make every hire in all of our companies that people can just copy and plug into their business.
And so what would you say, just as like one tactical thing you can leave behind, like would be some good interview questions for someone if you're looking to hire process junkies?
Yeah, good question. So we always like to ask people like what they built in other companies, like what systems and processes that they've actually been responsible for, and if they actually enjoy building and figuring stuff out and solving problems versus being given clear instructions to just follow and do it. Because there are a lot of people that don't do well without clear instructions. We try to avoid those people, especially early on in the business, because we want our early hires to be to be leaders. There might be situations where you do need a follower. You have the system built out and you want someone who loves being given directions and loves doing the same thing all the time. But we want to find out, does this person actually like the stress and creativity and all the stuff that goes into problem solving and figuring stuff out, or do they prefer to come in when things are already built?
Actually, that's a really good point. I find there's just like different strokes for different folks, and you just want the people who are more around the organization rather than the operations. I always need an operational person around me because I can't stand doing the same thing over and over again. What about that? How do you handle that? Like people, sometimes you just need people to just do it rather than build it.
Yeah, I mean, there are people out there that love doing the doing the same thing over and over, and for those people, you try to focus on like what's the how do I make this the perfect job for them? Because if it's the perfect setup for them, they're probably not going to leave. Like maybe they're a single mom that gets to work remote with you, and they need to pick up their kid from school every day for an hour, and that's the time that they get off every single day, or they have maybe half their hours are flexible. It could be different for any company. But again, you don't want to focus on the money. And since they're going to be doing the same thing for a while, you want to say, hey, how do I tweak this job to make it perfect for their lifestyle? And most of the times you'll find it doesn't need to be this dramatic tweak that hurts your company in any way.
Yeah. I mean, it's just about listening to them and going, okay, no problem.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. With that, how do people find you, Nathan?
Yeah, feel free to connect with me on social media, Nathan Hirsch on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and you can go to Outsource School if you're interested in our hiring process, or if you want to try out Ecom Balance, mention this podcast and you get 2 free months of bookkeeping there. So just ecombalance.com.
Amazing. Thank you again for coming to another Agency Connect podcast and sharing the wisdom of SOPs and how to hire appropriately.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Right. Thank you. For more great insights on partnerships and software, like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.